Good evening, and it's a lovely evening. Without all the wind stress today. Gosh, why am I not hearing myself well? I'll trust my voice may be a little weak because I've had to do a lot of talking today, and but without the wind stress and with finally a little pain relief. As a matter of fact, it's been months since I was prescribed an opioid, and I was not doing well. But before I picked up my medication, I was hurting. I'd been up early, and my knees were burning, and my feet were my lumbar, that spot in the middle of my back that I've fractured twice. I've fractured T7 twice. I'm sorry, I'm kind of deliberately dehydrated. I don't want to be waking up during the night trying to pee into a urinal when I'm wearing 4 layers on my lower and 6 layers on my upper. Without the wind, and I'm sure it's in the 40s or mid 40s right now, but with the good cap on the heat, and the last layer being an inch of loft for only $30, I'm comfortable. I don't want to sleep. That's normally what makes me sleep is the wind fatigue. The cold makes me want to get inside that fart sack and recline, take the pressure off my spine. But without the pain and without the wind fatigue, because spent, half the day inside of a transport vehicle. And now I know I'm going to get to transport me because it's big enough. It's got the headroom. It's got the then room in the back for a wheelchair, go bag, and ditch bag. And it's really possible that surgery could take place soon. And by soon, I mean maybe around the first of next month. By then, it will only have been 1 year since the injury. And while I'm at it, before anybody tunes out here, Cass Comerford, I really enjoyed your last chapter about uh, going to kind of briefly going to reform school. And it's, to tell you the truth, Cass, I see why your grandparents wanted you to become a teacher or a chemist. Is frankly, as someone who's been professionally employed as an editor, I wouldn't change your word. Your English composition is excellent. You didn't break any of the rules. Please, I knew one guy who actually kind of just cheated his way into UMass. I'm sorry, I didn't even buy water. I don't intend on drinking any water before. Forgive my voice; it's a little rough, but I had a Yankee that actually invited himself into my home, and I told him at the time, I said, I'm not going to support you and your habits. He has disability and money from his father that his mother gives to him. And he actually blew all that before he arrived. And I was still growing a pot. And I had stocked up for 3 months before he arrived. He arrived late. And I'll get to the point, bring you back on track here. It was this guy somehow managed to get, because I've checked, he managed to get a bachelor's in English from UMass Amherst, which they think there's some hot shit. And when this guy handed me his journal, are you listening, Cass? See, Cass knows how to write and how to present, how to deliver. It's called delivery, yes. This guy, Jonathan, I'll think of it. In his journal, he actually, not literally, he actually began every fucking sentence with the personal pronoun I, which is not only a bad sign of his psychology, it's considered to be like the worst sin in the composition of the English language or pretty much any language. Every sentence for a couple hundred pages started with I. Would you call that bad writing or just a complete nutbag who's absolutely egocentric? That's one of the number one rules in English is really never start more than about one when doing a narrative, especially autobiography. You're limited if you do it more than about 1 out of 10 times. If I were editing your work, I would correct you and make you recompose that sentence to where I is not the first word. And Cass Comerford followed that rule. Was generally, the personal pronoun I beginning of a sentence only occurred about every, rarely, like at most like 1 out of 10 sentences or something. That's kind of the general rule but anyway, it's a lovely night. It's without that ripping, tearing wind. If you noticed, I've been in so many videos, my face was windburned. It was red and flushed from this endless wind. And actually it's now, creeping up on midnight. There's 1, 2, 3. I can hear cars in the distance, but there's come a couple more coming from the west. It's great. And actually, the custodian here at the clinic, he probably was working in the ante room or whatever, but he didn't, or actually as soon as I showed up and rolled out, very pleased. I did a great job on prepping all my shit. All my stuff stayed dry through more than 4 inches of rain. And did such a, when I finally got tired of it, I spent most of the evening hanging out on the side of the 7-Eleven on the Sunset side. You saw the video. Then I went up to Walmart, bought a few things. Really won't need anything from up there because I got should have plenty of tinned beef and cheese. I'm gonna keep it simple. And actually, the hyperuria and stuff like that, I'm losing weight. When they weighed me today at my doctor's office, maybe I ought to go over that, review that on a separate thing, is that I came up with fully clothed at 297 pounds, and I told the nurses that I'm wearing 20 pounds of shoes and clothing, and that's true. So my actual weight is only 277 pounds, although I can't stand the sight of my gut in a mirror. I spent almost all my life flat-bellied and in good shape, was slender almost all my adult life. Actually, when I was 21 years old, I knew, because knowing a lot of shit, it's muscle is a great strain on the heart. Muscle tissue compared to adipose tissue, fat, consumes like 100 times more oxygen because they're working there. And when I was 21 years old, I was working for the state of Texas, and I decided to eat just once in the morning and not for the rest of the day. Be very active. I usually worked 12-hour days were my normal. Walked a lot, high speed, didn't really. And I lost Oh gosh, I lost about 80 pounds in 1 year without even trying. Just by, there it goes with the, there you go. Just by following. In the morning, I would eat, because I would be served in the officer's mess, and I would eat all I want to eat. And in the afternoon, if I was lagging, I might drink a kind of an average size, milkshake for a little sugar and protein and basic, but that's it. In the morning, if I wanted to, I would eat 3,000, 4,000 calories. That's where I learned. It's you really, breakfast is the most important meal, and if you do it kind of in the English fashion, where even the two biggest meals are breakfast and luncheon, or what some people here in Texas even call dinner. We old original Texas don't call it. We don't call lunch dinner. We call lunch lunch. Uh, my family, we really didn't sup. We didn't have that light. Yeah, there might be somebody hitting the refrigerator and stuff to see if mom had some pie left or something like that, but we, didn't stick to all the kind of the classical. Anyway, I'm getting off on a. It's been a wonderful day because today I got some hope. I could tell my doctor was actually, because she was even inquiring about the imaging, and I told her that Scott and White had most of the imaging, and there's more, but they really imaged the hell out of me before turning me over to St. David's. And St. David's did some, but Scott and White's got the. Even my best friend didn't realize. He thought that they may be able to just peg the bone back on, but no, I didn't really tell him that. No, it's a shoulder replacement. They have to cut off the top of the bone because they've got to have a good, firm, hard. The top part of the humerus it's like a ball, and in order to really reconnect everything and stuff, it's got to be strong. And that whole top of my humerus was not only it fractured, but there's compression fractures and hairline fractures going out from that are going to continue to be weak. It's not like a regular fracture where it'll actually grow back stronger than the bone around it. And that bone has slid down and messed around. So they have to take off about 2 inches at least at the top, and then just slide in the new piece that's been computer generated, computer shaped, and it's not that complicated. And my lung function today, like I already talked about, and everything else will indicate that I'm a good candidate for surviving that you know uh, doctor controlled lethal overdose that they call general anesthesia. And so I have some hope, because if they do it pretty soon, then I'll be able to escape the weather, because I'll have to go to rehab. As a matter of fact, they handed me, that's what I was explaining to Bruno just an hour ago, is that one of the first things they did was hand me a questionnaire asking me all sorts of questions. All I had to do was check a mark, and yeah, they know that would have to go to rehab, and then some skilled nursing for at least, the absolute minimum would be 30 to 40 days and maybe 60, but it won't take me too long, because actually when you suffer another traumatic event like that, like surgery, your brain will literally gear up its production of the various, hormones, steroids, and stuff that you need to heal. And they'll be giving me some chemical assist too. I'm starting to bore myself. I wish I had something funny to say. I'm just trying to point out that I'm not in the least bit sleepy, because I'm not in pain and the wind ain't battering me. I'm not And I've had that incredible elation of, because, I went in expecting the worst. I expected my doctor to be more irritated with me than actually working to help me. But this is where, if you've hung in for 15 minutes now, I've had consistently now for actually before Skidmark Nichols, I've consistently had every 28-day period, I've had 2,000 returning viewers, most of them locals. They know my name. They shared it, especially through the Nextdoor app and stuff like that. And I have a feeling that my doctor really finally got on the ball and stuff like that, because, and I confirmed for her that, yeah, I've been sleeping for 6.5 months in front of the hypochondriac clinic, and she did not challenge me on it. I told her they don't do any tests and stuff. There's no lab pickups. It's only to keep, and I told her I'm being scientific about this, that this place serves the function of keeping rich people who are preoccupied with their health from overwhelming. That's a big hospital over there. Scott and White has a huge hospital over there. It's necessary for a city of 70,000 people. And this place serves a useful function, because otherwise that ER would be overwhelmed. That's one of the reasons that there's actually two of them. There's one on Dessau, and there's one right behind the hotel I've been staying in. There's a little kind of AM, PM emergency care clinic where they're going to quickly do triage and decide whether they can patch you up quickly or go ahead and call an ambulance and have you taken to the ER. So anyway, I can't really think of anything too amusing to say. I'm just enjoying the fact that it's midnight. My hands aren't freezing, because I guess I'm pumping enough hot blood into them constantly. I'm even the elevated hand right now. And shit, it'd be nice to have a joint. The opioids aren't depressing me. The pain depresses me. We call it, the old term is substance P, is the chemistry of pain. Substance P. When the Japanese at the University of Kyoto cloned the first cannabinoid receptors, you know what they named it? I find it kind of amusing. But then again, it's University of Kyoto, and they named whatever substance that was that binds to that neuroreceptor, they named it Substance K, which, me being Kent Kruger and then explaining all that stuff, it is just coincidence, or is it? I've had a wonderful life, and I have some hope now, because if I can get my arm fixed, my legs are actually making a great comeback, and it's been a long time. It's probably actually even in the hospital. It's been a long time since my lumbar went out. When my lumbar goes out, I'm not able to walk. And stuff. So I'm doing fine. And if you're still listening at this point, I'm trying to make plans, because I'm going to be going pretty regularly to hook up and maybe have lunch with Josh Bennett. And speaking of people with the initials JB, I've had a whole roundup. I can tell it's the same guy with different channels. I do want to conclude with this, because those are the people that don't watch, but a minute before they decide to tear into me and be a big tough man and talk shit to me and tell me what a loser old man I am and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I'm having one of those John Cleese moments of indignation. Yes, well, somebody who's, even if you know their full name, you're not going to find. Maybe I will begin. Okay, this is a beginning. I'm at 20 minutes. You see, for those of you who come on here criticizing me and shit like that, and talking all kind of smack and stuff to me like that, it's because you're a fucking complete nobody. You know that? You always will be, because you're already middle-aged, and you're only, so far, probably your only published notes or of your criminal activity, some DUI or some, and so I should begin with this, is that I'll eventually may get around to talking about my childhood, like Cass Comerford and stuff, because it was an interesting childhood, and he's talking about his criminality. Dude, I just was, actually, they knew a lot of stuff, and they just weren't punishing me. So, yeah, every time I move that my non-dominant hand, it's so. For those of you who, let me begin a proper introduction on, and some of you have asked for my autobiography, so let's start with what is in print, and that's a good place to start. Trust me, I'll end this before 30 minutes because of my voice. I've had to do quite a bit of talking today, and I'm just, in my old age, my voice is getting weak. I don't have the voice of a bull anymore. When I was 8 years old, I do remember there was another one, like a birth announcement, and like in the Caldwell paper, the Burleson County paper, which is only a weekly paper, because people were anticipating my birth, because I already had a brother that was already won his first All-American. And so you'll find the first publication of me, the first article was just a brief standalone article. Not entirely sure, don't remember the opening well. I don't know if they tied it to the boxing match on television or not, where me and a 10-year-old kid, I was 8 years old, we towed it up. This is in the early 60s, somewhere around 62 or something like that. And the Bryan Daily Eagle, that's the newspaper in the Texas A&M area, they wrote a brief article, pretty much just mentioned, I remember them mentioning my name, and I do believe they did mention my brothers, and then they named my mother and father and our street address, which is like no big. That's when I've already told this before in another video. That's when I noticed that people would come around the corner there off of 25th and start kind of just going real slow. Like if I was out in the yard, working, mowing the yard or messing around or something like that, they would stop and watch. They just were curious to see the last of the Kruger brothers and stuff. And told you, my next door neighbors at that time, we lived in a little tiny little clapboard house that was built out of used lumber. You listen to me, Cass Cumberford. I did not grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. My brothers were making very little money in the professional football game. They certainly weren't being generous to my parents. They weren't really, because they didn't really have that much money and they were living the high life. You know, it's, if you're making $12,000 a year, you got to spend like you're making 20. And actually, but he was never helpful to my parents. He was my oldest brother. He mostly lived off his wife most of his life, and seriously, always had a job or employment or had some business going, but to make ends meet, he just twisted his wife's arm until she called mama. So um, that first article may have been prompted by the boxing match, which was on a concrete floor covered with army blankets, one layer. They were slippery as shit. We got 3 knockdowns apiece. It was declared a draw between a 8-year-old kid. This was the boys' club. It came on during Town Talk, which is 3:30. It was the biggest daytime show in that whole region. It was Town Talk. In the mornings, it was 10 Acres. I remember that. What was his name? It was like Johnny Cotton or something like that. You know, just good old boys talking about 10 Acres and then Town Talk. It wasn't really a soap opera kind of TV station. And it was kind of easy to get 3 knockdowns on a surface like that. That's where my glaucoma starts. And I was actually still into a lot of mischief, just like Cass Cumberford. I hate to talk about it right now. Maybe I will in the future. But I'm trying to tell you, if you're trying to research my life, that's the start. Is around 62 or so. The Brian might have been even 61. The Brian Daly Eagle, now just known as the Eagle. And then it was a long stretch. You know, after that, I went out to California for a while and then came back. And then when I went back in 68, my brother picked up the phone and called a Jewish dude who was a sports column writer, Rosenblum or something like that. And afterwards, my brother said, "You got to learn to toot your own horn." And I thought it was just kind of, called the guy up and gave him a completely fictitious story about how much I eat for breakfast. It was like, the quote goes like this, is like quoting my sister-in-law, that she cooks 2 dozen eggs and she gets 1 and Charlie gets 2 and I get the rest, and a pound of bacon in which she gets 1 slice, Charlie gets 2, and I get the rest, and a loaf of toast with butter and jelly was what they were. Then they point out that I'm 13 years old, almost 6'4", 265 pounds, and my feet are already bigger than Charlie's. And then a few months later, about 2 months later, that was my second. That would be the San Francisco, the one that had the green sheet, the green sports section is San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner. Can't remember. I've got the clippings somewhere, but I didn't even read my own press back in the day. When you're real busy like that, you don't read your. I didn't read a lot of that shit till later. Stuff people would give me copies of it, and I just put it away somewhere. And so because I'd actually turned 14 right after he called up, what was it, Stuart Rosenblum or something like that. And got that published. Then it pops up. Yeah, by the time they're saying 13, but I was actually 14 years old. All you people are trying to talk smack to me. I was what is a globally distributed publication called Sports Illustrated. The whole world's heard of it, and now they got it in every kind of language. But in those days, it was strictly American and in English, and they had subscribers globally because, like Aggies and other, people who follow sports, they might be working in some foreign nation, and it was distributed globally. And I appear on the famous people pages with people like Pete Rose, Charlie Hustle, that was Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain, and stuff like that. And they essentially retell the story about my eating and stuff, and my size and my age, because it's really not average to be 6'4" at age 13, and I was up to size about 14 shoe, and they didn't mention the shoe thing, but my brother made sure, because he's had a relationship with Sports Illustrated, they misspelled my brother Rolf's name. I think they spelled it as Dolph or something like that. He likes doing shit like that. Maybe I'll tell the jacket story, maybe here in a little bit if I get up to steam, about the weird things but that's where you can start. That's the first 3 publications on me, and then after that, the publications explode. I have lived a life worthy of note, and that means that somebody else writes about it and publishes it, distributes it at their expense. Writing a diary is not a life of note. It's you making note of your life and hoping, like Anne Frank, that somebody else later discovers it and publishes it. So there was 2 guys that were in the dungeon tonight in the Dunny Hole that had the pleasure to go in there, read their little whiny shit and smack talking and stuff like that. And I bet you neither one of those guys was over 5'6", and probably both of them looked like a Vietnamese pot-bellied pig with piercings and shit like that, and tatted up. And it really makes me feel sad for the fuckers that they really think that they can bring down somebody who has such high self-esteem as me. Please, I live in the streets, and the people who get to know me quickly realize that they're not dealing with somebody who feels like they're down and out for the count and stuff like that, or had my daddy beat me, my daddy and mommy were drunks or shit like that. No, it ain't happening. I've had a wonderful life. That's why I'm able to tolerate what a person called a while ago about suffering. I then did a brief discourse on the fact that suffering is what gives meaning to pleasure. And without hate, love would just be kind of a everyday thing. Instead of the special thing it is, it's almost a malady. Real romantic love will make you sick as a dog. It's horrific, just like love in the time of cholera. How the mother was, telling her son to embrace the sickness, and how, it's, anyway, I'm running around 35, 36 minutes. I just still find it amusing that all I have to do is say the word hobo, and the hundreds of people that are still watching for that word, and then they attack again. I do that deliberately. If y'all think I'm not, I do it so I can get rid of them. Please, I've blocked. Y'all haven't been noticing because you're not dealing with the count and the analytics. I have run off 1,000 subscribers at this time. I'm up to about 313, something like that. And I've deleted so many comments, and the AI is pretty good at catching anybody harassing or bullying me or threatening me and shit. It's actually the first time I've had 3 comments in the dunny hole in a while. They've been kind of dead until all I got to do is say the word hobo, and they come out the woodwork because they're sitting there watching. So there's about 1,000 locals that watch me all the time. There's about 700 hobo lovers that are just waiting for a chance to subscribe and get a shot in or get to one of their other channels that isn't blocked, that I haven't blocked, to defend their hero, the object of their sexual desire. Check on my videos there. I already explained the difference between Leander and Hero. Hero was a priestess of the temple of Aphrodite. I have bored myself to tears and at 36 minutes because please remember, this channel is primarily for me to record my thoughts, my ramblings, my recollections, my life, talk about things I'm interested in. And if we can come to an intersection and agree on things, and if you enjoy what I have to say, that's fine. If not, it's no skin off my nose, because unlike Hobo Shitstain, who from the start has been working on building an empire, the never elected king of the hobos, that's not my intention here. My intention is to simply record my thoughts, and it's kind of like my journal. Please remember, this is my 3rd channel. I've been at this for a long time. I used to only do it when I was drunk. Sometimes I'd be happy, but as I began exposing the criminal nature of so many people in my home counties of Burleson and Brazos County and stuff like that, I just became more and more angry that I had so much of my life eaten up by false accusations. I've been framed 4 times. Don't forget that. Proved it. And while people that I know are just criminals, I'm talking about big time criminals. I'm not talking about some petty, cast comer from oh, please. Most of that's petty theft kind of stuff. It's like, that's why we have different juvenile laws. There's just been so many of them. My home county, and even when the people who ran under the Democratic Party decided that they were going to go Republican and stuff, every fucking Republican that got into office in my county, sooner or later, got caught doing official oppression, trading fellatio for an 80-cent an hour raise, or in case of the county judge, raping his secretary or something, and people fucking up big time. My local justice of the peace was publicly reprimanded for making classist and racist remarks. That would be like Jim Baldwin. It was one of the not Joe Baldwin, the environmental quality control officer. It was Judge Baldwin, who's he only got in 1 term and was out. He made some really stupid remarks when they killed Chester Jackson, and Chester was revived with permanent damages. And that case was heard right here in Austin. They didn't tell the outcome, but I'm sure Chester Jackson is going to be getting back rubs and foot rubs for the rest of his life while he watches TV and eats anything he wants to eat, because you don't kill somebody, revive them, and walk away scot-free. And he actually, Baldwin actually said, I will finish with this at 40-some minutes, because I saw the videos, the body cams and stuff. The guy he was an MHMR patient. He was schizophrenic. He might have been doing some meth, but it's pretty common in an area where people have nothing to live for other than getting high and stuff. And he said something like they need to hang him up by his feet, or so that his fucking brains go back into his head or some shit like that. And talking about a black man and hanging them upside, hanging, and the guy who reported him was the black state trooper. Yeah, we got some major league dummies in my county, but I'm not one of them. I don't think I'm going back. I don't like the way it's going there.